Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to Addressing the Issue with me, your host, Andy Streisfeld. This is a continuation of the arc that we had for the last 3 episodes in regarding voter apathy and voter low turnout. And with us today, guests that need no introduction, but I'll introduce them anyway. Dave Levac, former Brantford Brant MPP, Speaker of the House, Queen's Park, and Tim Philp, the former host of Politically Speaking. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so we've talked about in previous episodes voter apathy, low voter turnout. There has been a correlation that the public has a problem with the media, that media fuels it, and then others have corresponded that it's the political candidates themselves. If they're not happy with their charisma, they're not happy with what they call the perks, the houses they live in, the stipends they get. And this is something that we want to address the issue, because lately now we've been hearing the stories of Sussex Drive and how it's being ripped apart and probably will never be built again. How we have opposition leaders in this country who live in pretty much a public house when you think about it, because the government pays for it. But at the same time, they have a nice house. The Prime Minister has what's considered a slum, and the slumlord is the Government of Canada or the National Parks Commission. So let's have you gentlemen talk. I'll start with you, Tim. Is the perception right? Is this one of the reasons why the public is upset and of these, what we call the perks?
Well, I imagine that some parts of the public are indeed upset. The difficulty is that in the last few years, we've ended up with a situation where it doesn't matter what government does. It's wrong, it's bad, it shouldn't happen. And, you know, I've been by 24 Sussex Drive, and it's pretty nice digs, at least from the outsides. And, you know, there are some very good reasons why you would want a prime minister, for instance, or a leader of the opposition to live in such a place, because there are genuine security concerns, and there are a lot of practical things. There's a lot of entertaining when the president comes. You know, you take him to dinner at 24 Sussex and things like that. That are all public functions. There's a lot of public usage that goes on there. The condition that Sussex Drive found itself in is simply because everybody was too afraid to, I mean, they knew it was going to be expensive. And when you say, okay, we're going to spend X number of $1 million on renovating this building that's, you know, been there for more than 100 years, the public are going to get up in arms, and everybody is afraid to upset the electorate. And I actually think the electorate's a lot smarter than that. I think the electorate are, if they're informed properly about what's going on and they're given the right information, I think that they can make a useful judgment. The problem is the Prime Minister would say one thing, Works Canada would say something else, the Leader of the Opposition would say something else, and what do? You're left with this tremendous amount of disinformation that's out there, and how is the average voter going to make any sense of that when they really just don't care? They want to earn their living, they want to look after their kids, they want to have a nice life. It's not something they care about.
All right,
well, that kind of ends the show, doesn't it?
Well, no, come on. Speaker of the House, third-ranking largest member of the party and of the government. You didn't have a mansion. But I don't think
an apartment inside of Queen's Park.
There we go, an apartment inside of Queen's Park.
And it used to be somebody else's.
Right.
So okay. Historically.
So let's talk about that.
Okay. So the perks, what people talk about in perks are what Tim said about misinformation or lack of knowledge about how the system works. Everything gets considered to be by Joe Public a perk, because you get your pay, you're supposed to go to work, you're supposed to come home. And the job itself brings those perks to it that balance off the fact that almost all members, including mostly the federal members, more so, that they're leaving their home for a weeks at a time. Sometimes they don't even get back for the weekend. In Ontario, we could get back for the week. So you're missing your family life for a week at a time. And so the perks that they're talking about are a good place to work, a place to sleep, a budget to allow you to do those kinds of things. If you live 50 kilometers outside of Toronto, you get a a stipend to say, here's how much you can put towards an apartment in Toronto, and that doesn't go very far anymore. My first apartment when I was elected in '99 was $950 a month. When I left, before I became speaker, when I left MPP, it was $1,800 a month, and now it's even more. So that budget doesn't go very far, and if it doesn't meet that, you have to pay out of your pocket to have a place to stay. So people talk about history, they talk about present day, and they talk about the future. So talking about today, I agree with Tim in terms of 24 Sussex. It was basically people with more people whispering in their ear, oh, you better not do this because you're going to lose some votes, instead of doing the right thing. And all of us would probably agree, and I agree with you that most public would understand that. They would say, spend the money and fix the place, for Pete's sakes. This is our prime minister. This is the face of the world that's coming to see us, and we say, oh, we can't go to 24 Sussex because it's a slum. We don't live in those conditions. So
have dinner at the Chateau.
So for me, perks is everything from an extra pencil that you get given or a mug all the way through, and it's your own judgment as an individual MPP or an MP to say, I'm not taking that perk because I don't need it. So there's a personal piece to this as well.
We're going to stick with that thought. We're going to come back to that personal piece in just a moment. You're with us here on Addressing the Issue with Tim and Dave. We're going to talk in just a moment. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details. Looking for the best way to get the Major League Baseball games you want to watch? Rogers Super Sports Pack has you covered. With MLB Extra Innings, you'll have a premium ticket to out-of-market regular season games with all games available in HD. Don't miss the action from the games you want from both the American and National Leagues. MLB Extra Innings, part of the Super Sports Pack. For only $35.95 a month, Rogers customers get all this for one all-inclusive price. Order using your remote starting on channel 431 or visit Rogers.com today.
Personal finance show that dares to ask those money questions you've always wanted to. Join Mike Bregueth when he talks with experts on all aspects of money. Money Matters with Mike Bregueth, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Celebrate the richness of cultural diversity at the Guelph and District Multicultural Festival from June 9th to 11th at Riverside Park in Guelph. Experience food from around the world, enjoy live music and dancing, cultural performances, shopping, children's activities, and more. Visit gdmf.ca for more information.
Welcome back to Addressing the Issues. I'm here with Tim and Dave. Okay, so you brought an interesting point, and so did you. And you were, as we were segueing, you were talking about the personal situation. So we're going to show this this little clip here in just a moment here. So this is from the parliamentary budget. It shows the breakdown of an entry-level MP who comes into Ottawa, and after the $172,000, it shows here $27,000 as the stipend in Ottawa, and you're from some faraway place somewhere in Canada, and like you said, you're living there for probably half the year, and the other half you're back in your riding, whatever it is. And most of the time you hear about living together, MPs living together, because the $27,000 stipend cannot get them affordable housing, can't get an average Canadian to have affordable housing. So let's ask this question. When you were an MPP or when you were speaker and you had the ability to expose to different types of people from different places, What was the most interesting situation you've been hearing about them trying to make their ends meet in this case here? Because that transitions to the next question.
Yes, and quite frankly, that is true. Our own former MP, Phil McColman, lived with a colleague, and they shared an apartment because they needed to make their stip-in work in an Ottawa hotel close to Parliament Hill. So there's an example of, and they got along famously. There were situations where, as Speaker, I did have some come to me and say, well, I'm not getting along with somebody. Can I get a little bit more added to my apartment so I could go get another one on my own? Well, that's the Board of Internal Economy, and you can't do it for one person, because if you do it for one person, you've got to expand the length of that. So there have been discussions in, and I think it's germane to the background information or behind the scenes information. The Board of Internal Economy is made up by party members plus the Speaker, and we would have discussions about costs. And my responsibility, internal responsibility as the Speaker was, I was the chair of the Board of Internal Economy, and I was responsible for two budgets. One was the internal budget for the MPPs, and the second one was the budget for the entire House, which was somewhere around $350,000 annually for 400 staff. So I had to kind of work with the staff to figure out all that one. So we would be approached and say, we need more money in order to do this because of inflation. So we tried to keep up with inflation, but the government of the days, which I had both, had trouble with giving the money into the pot because somebody was whispering into their ear, don't let them do that because it's not what we believe. We should be not spending any money, and we're not government, so it's not our responsibility. They'll get heck if they increase the budget.
But there's another side to this, and that is, people look at the salary, you think $170,000, and most people don't make anywhere near that. And they think that's a lot of money. And frankly, it is a lot of money. But when you consider what these people have to do to earn that money, first of all, they're in an executive position. They're making decisions that are going to affect every man, woman, and child in this country. And that deserves to be compensated for fairly. The second thing is that most people who are earning less money, they get to go home at night, and they get to see their kids, and they get to see their wife, and they get to spend time. They don't miss birthdays, they don't miss anniversaries, etc. You're a member of Parliament, and you're from Kelowna, and you get travel back and forth, but for so many times. But that's a pretty difficult thing to do, and you're away from your family all this time. You're stuck in a strange city. And I got to tell you, anybody that's spent any time in Ottawa, I don't think I'd want to live in Ottawa permanently. It's
careful now. Careful.
It's too bloody cold for one thing. But those are the kinds of things that they give up. And then pile on top of that some things which I think you probably talked about in an earlier show, which is the abuse and stuff that they go through because they're getting that kind of. And people have this attitude that, well, I'm paying your salary, and it sound familiar, Dave?
I've heard it.
And when you get that kind of thing coming back at you, you start to think why am I doing this? And then you go home for the breaks or whatever, and you think you can spend time with your family, no, you're stuck in your constituency office dealing with all the problems that need your personal attention. It's a tough job. And I say this, you've done the job, Dave. And
and it depends on how much you dedicate to it.
Right. All right, so let's do this. I'm a student of politics. I studied in university. I'm not going to betray my age. I'm not going to ask you to betray yours.
I think he's the young fella here.
But I remember watching series like Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister,
Sure.
and getting the 411 on what it was to be in politics.
Yep.
And okay, so now let's fast forward. You're no longer an MP. You're no longer an MPP. Now you're the premier. Okay, now you have the situation of where you're going to live and where you're going to work. Now, you can go the way of Doug Ford and live at your house and have your block parties and have everything, and that is your seat of power, and that's your seat of where you're going to live. Or you're going to go the other way, like 10 Downing Street or presidential palaces or White Houses, where you're going to have your Oval Office and your office, and you're going to see dignitaries there, you're going to live there, and it's going to be a house that has transcended when the Canadians burned it down in 1812, they had to rebuild it. And since then, it's been, last I checked, helipads, surface air missiles, and a bowling alley.
But I just wanted to point out one thing about the White House. You talk about that. Harry Truman moved into the White House, and the furniture was all like ratty furniture from Franklin Roosevelt that was left there. The building was in such bad shape that the Trumans actually had to move out across the street to Blair House for a couple of years, where somebody tried to shoot him, while they completely gutted the White House and rebuilt it. So that's only been since the Truman era, about 1950 or so.
You have to have the nerve to do that, but to come back to Ontario, it's actually the party that provides the premier of the day that gives them enough money to rent an apartment in Toronto close by. So that's a choice of the party.
Perfect.
If Doug said to the party, which would have gone to him, I suspect they would have gone to him and said, we've got this really neat apartment right near da-da-da-da-da, would you? And he said, no, because I've got a house. Well, you can't suck and blow at the same time, because if you want to protest the premier, you're going to protest him at his home, which I disagree with, by the way.
Okay.
But he's got kids and he's got like all of this. So you're going into the neighborhood, and you're going into the neighborhood. So there is sense to pulling the leader and putting them somewhere where at least it's more neutral,
right,
and less susceptible to hurting the neighborhood or hurting the family or protesting in front of somebody's house. And if I had my way, I would actually try to make it, I'm not sure if I'd do legislation, but what I would say is to everybody, to educate them, stay the heck away from people's homes to protest. That is absolutely uncouth. It is not fair, and it's the individual person. So if anyone ever attacked my family, which thank God it never happened in 20 years, I would kook. I would go upset. So I would have to make a decision. I'm quitting. I'm not going to do this to put my family through that, or else I would ask for some kind of surveillance or help to make sure that my family doesn't get that. So
that's the new politics, Dave. That's the way it is. I mean, everybody's angry.
And that's the unfortunate part of it.
Now, that's interesting. We'll be talking about the anger and the threats in the following episodes that are going to be coming on.
It makes sense.
So, but okay, so we're along the line here. So we've talked about you've decided to run for politics. You've ran for politics. You reached, like I said, third highest position in government. So now here you are. You're the prime minister, and now you're entitled to vacation. You're like I'm not here to try to argue for any political person and any political strife.
Understood.
But you're entitled to vacation, and it just can't always be our version of Camp David, whatever. You have to travel. Now, rock stars travel with entourage, you travel with entourage. You have your security detail, you bring your family along with you. Now you have a choice. You can fly Air Canada and book out the whole flight. You can fly a military jet with media and everybody else, just like the president does and other dignitaries do. And you could land somewhere very nice, and you could take the top floor of the Holiday Inn if you wanted it. But at the end of the day, the question is, at what point do we have to accept the fact that, look, travel is part of the deal, vacation is part of the deal. You're, like you said, you're sacrificing a lot to do this, and there are costs involved. Mm-hmm. And if you're staying at the Aga Khan's mansion with his security, or if you're staying at the Holiday Inn Barbados, it's the same concept.
It's all judgment. All of it is judgment. So one could criticize the present prime minister for the judgment to do some things that might have been better to be left out of it. So yes, and in one case he was found from the Integrity Commissioner to be breaching the rules. But having said that, what I'm going to point out is, before people want to throw the stones and it's not your party, when your party becomes the power, which usually does happen somewhere down the line, that person's going to want to do the same thing. And they're going to go somewhere. Unless they absolutely are so intrinsic in their thinking that now what I've said I can't do. But we all know Preston Manning's little trick. He said, I'm not going to take the house, I'm not going to take the salary, I'm not going to take, and all of a sudden within 4 months he took the house, he took the pension, so the reality is, if this is the way the system works, leave that part alone unless they're breaching the rules.
All right, Tim, we're gonna take a break. You're gonna have a shot at this one.
Okay.
Tim and Dave, we're gonna be back on addressing the issues.
Waterloo Regional Police are asking for the public's help in identifying the individual in this photo as they continue to investigate a break and enter at a residence on Activa Avenue in Kitchener. On April 5th at approximately 9:40 p.m., an unknown male attempted to gain entry into a residence by prying at the door. The suspect was confronted by a resident and fled the area. The investigation is ongoing by members of Waterloo Regional Police Service's break, enter, and vehicle theft team. Investigators are asking the public to check their home surveillance systems or dash cams for video. Leave a tip with Crime Stoppers in one of 3 convenient ways: the toll-free number of 1-800-222-TIPS, a secure, anonymous online tip with WaterlooCrimeStoppers.com, or by mobile phone at p3tips.com. It's entertaining made easy. Set the scene with decor, food, fashion, and fun. Join Carolina Suarez for Tapestry Hall Style Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Life can be stressful. I know that. We're here to help you. Simple, easy recipes, amazing guests. At Home with Chef D, Wednesdays, 6 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Addressing the Issues, and I promised Tim, you got it. It's yours.
Well, first of all, I think if the Prime Minister tried to take a commercial flight, even if he flew coach class, I think the RCMP security detail would have a complete bird. There's no way they would allow that. And, you know, flying by a military aircraft, I mean, these pilots need to get flying hours and need to get experience. So if they fly the Prime Minister to Britain or Germany or something, well, it's really killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But the other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that I know that certainly people of our age tend to look upon politics the way it used to be, and I think we're somewhat dismayed by the way it's played today. I just finished reading a biography of Harry Truman. That's why I knew all those facts about the White House. Harry Truman used to go for walks, and he'd 120 paces a minute. That's his old military marching pace, and he'd march through the streets of Washington. He might have 1 guy with him. I mean, when Donald Trump wanted to go from the White House across the road to the church, they cleared the entire street out. This isn't 1950 anymore. The security concerns are real. And you know, when I look at, you know, the bubble that, you know, prime ministers and presidents and other things have to live under, you know, you become a target. Like, I mean, you know, look at all these flags. I'm not going to say what the flags say because they're extremely rude, but they talk about Trudeau. And, you know, he's generated a lot of antipathy towards the right. Now, I can't picture that sort of thing happening back in 1968 when Pierre Sr. was running. I mean, there was a lot of, they didn't like him, but they wouldn't do that. You wouldn't display a flag like that out in front of your home for everybody to see. You might think it, you might say it to your friends, but there are serious considerations in terms of security that people that are in those positions have to deal with. And if that means they have to fly in a military transport, I'm fine with that. It's better than having a state funeral.
The thing about that is the middle ground. Where's the sweet spot in this discussion? The sweet spot is you go on holidays, you are frugal to the amount that you need to spend of the taxpayers' money to get there and have your holiday and then come back. The problem is everybody knows exactly what everybody's doing with a picture or a video and everything else, and if they do something wrong, that becomes the focus of what happens. And what we have to kind of get back to is an understanding of the human condition, that I can't work 365 days of the year. I need a holiday. And it was like, there's 2 quick examples I'll give you. Obama used to get the crap kicked out of him by Trump for golfing. Too many games. Trump golfed more games in his first year than Obama did in 8. Here's another one. The Tories, Mike Harris, and I'm not picking on political, I'm picking on the stupidity of it. Mike Harris went after Dalton McGuinty for spending $400,000 on ads and consultants. In his first year, he had already spent $600 million. And it was not 600,000, sorry, $600,000. He had already outspent Dalton's 4 years. So this hypocrisy's got to stop. The truth has to come out, and sense has to be brought back.
All right, sorry,
Yeah.
Tim. Let me put it this way: politician and pundit. Here it is. I'll give you each about a minute on the situation. Okay, so let's do it this way.
A minute.
Come on, try it.
We're
try
done.
us.
Try
So
it.
here's where we're going to go. Do we just agree that the new entente for the future is that, look, you're going to be in power just as much as I'm in power, and you don't need me bringing it up during elections on how much you spent on vacation and how much you spent on the house and how much you spent on the car and how much you spent on this or that, because at the end of the day it's a duty that needs to be done. Let's go pundit politician. What are your thoughts
That is
on that?
probably the most naive speech I think I've ever heard in my entire life.
We're addressing the issue, buddy.
And that is the issue. I mean, politics, as Jane Stewart used to say when she was being hammered over the unemployment insurance thing, politics is a blood sport played with blunt instruments. That's exactly what it is. It's been that way ever since Caesar was stabbed in the Forum.
Whoa. I think there's a modicum of a generalization there. The blood sport is a blood sport. Do I understand the concept? Yes, I do. But there's better ways to do it.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay,
Dave. I
so
agree
there's
with
better
that.
ways to do it. Because I can tell you, when I first got elected, I was going down into the staff room for the MPPs. Right after question period, they were bang, 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 bang. And then right after that, they were having a beer and smoking a cigar together and talking about their children.
Yeah.
They were friends.
And that doesn't happen anymore.
And when I left, you couldn't go in a room where there was another party member in it.
Yeah, you'd be
and we
hauled
did
into the
committees.
Premier's office
They
and
had
you'd
the
bitch
same. We used to have the same room in the committee rooms when we traveled the province. We'd have the same committee room, and we'd have the same hotel. And now they book different hotels, and they won't let them eat meals together.
Thank you, Dave. You've just made my point. In
Right.
other words, we're in heated agreement.
But we're in heated agreement. But this blood sport thing. It's a cop-out to say it's okay to do it.
I didn't say that. What I said was that it's a blood sport and that's the way it's played. I didn't say it was right.
Okay, so now we're aggressively agreeing again.
And I'm going to stop you there because we actually have that consensus between you guys. We are going to actually have a future episode where we're going to talk about the civility or the uncivility in politics. I would love to have both of you guys back on that episode. So listen, thank you very much for tuning in to addressing the issues with this fine gentleman here and myself. Please tune in with us every Friday at 6:30 for another episode of Addressing the Issue. On behalf of Dave and Tim, take care.
Let's go have a beer and cigar.
Yeah, that's all on there.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Celebrate the richness of cultural diversity at the Guelph and District Multicultural Festival from June 9th to 11th at Riverside Park in Guelph. Experience food from around the world, enjoy live music and dancing, cultural performances, shopping, children's activities, and more. Visit gdmf.ca for more information.